G'day, it's Prezzo. Thanks for stopping by. Now today's video is all about finishing off these DIY garden park lights that I started building. Now this is the 4th episode. There are 3 others and the playlist's up above there if you want to go back and check it out. And today's episode is about fitting the glass to the front and back of these little park lights. Now you might say, well, it's a piece of glass, big deal. But I want to show you a process that I'm going to be using to make this a more decorative feature on these park lights, and I want to introduce you to an awesome YouTube channel that I found just recently. I've really been enjoying the content and I'm sure you will too. And it's one of those channels that's sort of flown under the radar a lot, and I just found it by accident, but like I say, I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy it. But let's head over to the bench and let's have a look at what's on today's menu. Now today what I want to do in this video is to show you how I'm going to fit the glass to the front and the back aperture on these fabricated aluminium housings. Now I've chosen to use glass because it's durable and I've got plenty of it. So the glass that I'm using is just ordinary 4mm float glass, or ordinary window glass if you like. Now I chose glass because it's durable, it's got that really lovely appearance to it. You could use acrylic or polycarbonate. Polycarbonate would work in this application, but it's got a slightly bluish tinge to it, which I don't like, but the glass I think is going to work well in this application. Now you can buy textured glasses, so this is the sort of glass you use for LED lighting. This is a translucent white glass, also used in LED lighting. Here's another one with a slightly bigger texture on it, and any of these would work well for what I want to do. But they're expensive and I don't have a lot of them, but I've got plenty of this ordinary plain float glass. Now the techniques that I want to try today, there are 2 of them. This first one here is just a masked and sandblasted glass panel. These are both failures, by the way. Various things went wrong with them, but this was just the starting point. So we're going to have a go at doing this one here, and we're going to get that herringbone pattern on the glass. This one here is called glue chipping. Now this is a technique I'd never seen before. Now this is where this YouTube channel comes in that I was talking about. So let's have a chat about that, and then we'll have a go at some practical work with glass. Should be fun. Now the YouTube channel I was talking about is called The Happy Gilder. It's run by a gentleman named Paul. He lives in the UK. He began experimenting with glass in 2014. He was given as a gift, a Christmas present, which was a 1-day gilding course with a tutor called Dave Smith. On that course he learned how to do acid etching, gilding and reverse painting on glass. Since then he's experimented with various techniques in glass. He's largely self-taught, but he has done a lot of experimentation, and he's also been reading on other people's blogs and websites and so on. Now Paul complained that the one thing he couldn't find when he was doing this research into working with glass was that tutorials didn't exist. So lots of people were happy to show the work that they were doing, but they didn't really explain the techniques. So his aim was to show people how you could achieve these amazing results with glass using simple tools and simple materials. And as I say, I came across his YouTube channel by accident, and as soon as I saw the work that he was doing, I was absolutely captivated, and I just had to give it a go. And that's where this little project comes in. So I figured I could adopt some of Paul's techniques and see how it's going to work out with this little outdoor light. Anyway, let's stop yapping, let's get busy. The first thing I'm going to do is to have a go at masking off these pieces of material, and we'll do some sandblasting, and then we'll try the glue chipping. Before I can do the etching on this glass, I'll need to mask one side of this. Now the correct material for this is the self-adhesive vinyl. You can buy this as a sandblasting quality vinyl, which is thicker and heavier than what I'm using. This is just that ordinary bookbinding vinyl you can buy at the newsagent. It's not really the best material to use, but it's what I've got, and from what I've experimented with, it actually works. So I'm just going to cut some strips off this. I've cleaned this glass, so I've just used some methylated spirits to do that, and we're just going to cut this to a little bit oversize. And of course, when the pros do this, they would already have this mask cut out with a vinyl cutter. which is a CNC controlled cutting device, a bit like a inkjet printer. I haven't got one of those, so I'm just going to use my laser engraver to do this job. I'll get the other one done and we'll go and cut this one out. If you're going to do this job on a laser engraver, it's really important that you are able to put the glass in the same position every time. Now, eventually I'll have to do 20 of these pieces of glass, and every one of them is going to have this vinyl mask on it. So what I've done is I've put a big piece of MDF in the bed of the laser, and it's pushed up hard against the left-hand edge and the top edge of the frame that the MDF sits on. Then I've engraved the outline of the glass. So the larger rectangle is the exact shape of the glass, and the inner rectangle is the shape of the window in the front of that aluminium tubing. Now I've got a couple of corner pieces here, so when I put the glass in place, I'm putting it back in the same position every time. Now eventually I'll cut all of the masks using either one pattern or the other. I haven't decided yet, but this allows me to ensure that they come out all the same, or relatively the same. All right, let's go. This template is for the glue chip, and I'm just using this little wedge here just to ensure that this piece of glass doesn't move. Now it's not quite square at the bottom, that's why that's there. So this one will sandblast through that large rectangular window, and that's going to be glue chipped. Now this one here, we're just going to sandblast and we're done. And this process of removing the waste is called weeding. And it's tedious and boring, but it's the only way it can be done. So you get the idea. So I'll clear that one out and then we can sandblast through that. Okay, well this is where we're at now. These two pieces of glass here are going to get sandblasted and they will eventually be glue chipped. Now the reason you need to do the sandblasting is you've got to have a rough surface for the animal glue to grip onto. And as the glue shrinks and dries, it tears up the surface of the glass and gives you that decorative effect. So that pair will be done, and the other pair will just be sandblasted and slid into place. Here's one here already in the body of the light. That's the effect that we'll get, except that the black areas will be clear glass eventually, and the clear areas are going to have that frosted white pattern. Alright, let's try these two first. Now I've just protected the back side of the glass with ordinary masking tape, so we're only going to sandblast the exposed areas through the mask itself. Well, that seemed to have worked okay. That cheap vinyl that I've used there seems to hold up okay as long as you don't overdo it. If you get the air underneath the edge, can tend to lift it up a bit, but that one's turned out okay. This one here is fine. So let's peel this one off and see how it looks. This one, we need to leave the mask intact on that while we do the glue chipping, so it's going to have to stay on there for a while. Alright, this one's essentially done, so I'll take the green tape off the back of this so we can see what it looks like through the glass. And the etched surface will be on the inside when we're finished. That's done. We're going to show this later on with the light on the inside so you get a better idea. Actually, that works better. There you go. So you get a better sense of how it's going to look when it's inside the light. But that literally takes just minutes to do. Even with the laser etching on the vinyl, it's very, very quick. So if the glue chipping doesn't work out, this is how I'm going to do them. I'm just going to mention this now because I know it'll come up in the comments, but you can engrave glass directly with the CO2 laser, and that's how I've done this one here. So using exactly the same geometry I used to cut that vinyl mask, I've just simply changed the pattern to an engraved pattern instead of a vector cutting pattern, and that's the result. And this is just a rough and ready one I did. But the thing is, this took 8 minutes and 30 seconds to do all of that, and that was using a 0.1mm scan gap. And this one here, which was the sandblasted version, took roughly 40 seconds to cut the mask. Took, say, about the same to weed out all of the vinyl, and probably less than a minute to do the sandblasting on this one here. So it's roughly 1/3 of the cycle time to do the sandblasting as the laser engraving on the glass. And also, it's just a slightly different color. The sandblasted one comes out with a slightly whiter area where it's been engraved, and this one here is just a little bit less clear. So that's the reason why I decided to go with the sandblasting. Okay, vegans and vegetarians, look away now, but the glue that we need to use for this glue chipping is a hide glue. Now this is a byproduct of the animal industry, so it's usually a mixture of skin and bone products, and it's rendered down into a glue. It needs to be mixed with the correct ratio of water, and it needs to sit for a while for the glue pearls to absorb that moisture, and the whole lot's heated to about 45 to 50 degrees C, and then it can go onto the glass. That glue's been sitting for about an hour and a half now. You can see how it's absorbed all the free moisture that was in that mix. So this is now ready to be heated. Okay, this is what I'm using now. I call this thing the Robo Cooker, but it's basically a PID controller, and I've got a small electric hot plate plugged into the back of this control unit here. Now you can see I've got this temperature set to 50 degrees centigrade, and this unit controls the power to the cooker. So the thermostat on the front here is not accurate enough to set the temperature to what I need. So I take that out of the system. We're just using this unit here to control the temperature. So here's the thermocouple that sends its temperature back to this unit, and then it switches this on and off as it's needed. So I'm going to put my glue into that 50 degrees centigrade water, and we're going to slowly bring the temperature up, and those little beads of glue should melt and form a liquid glue. Now, if this was smell-o-vision, you get a sense of what this glue smells like, but it's essentially the odor of wet dog. Anyway, let's let this melt, and then we're going to get it on the glass. It's been in there now for about 5 or 10 minutes, and you can see it's already turning into a nice runny liquid. Now, the information I have is that you should never take this glue above 70 degrees centigrade. If you do that, it'll turn into a liquid, but it destroys the properties of the glue. It'll become a liquid, but it won't grip onto the glass properly, and it doesn't contract properly, and it doesn't chip up the glass as it should. Now, if you watch the Happy Gilder, he says 45 degrees C. I'm just going to go a little bit higher than that to give me a bit of time to get this on before it starts to cool. Well, here's my prepared glass, and it's important to clean the glass. Now this has come out of the sandblaster and it's probably got grit and dust on it, so we want to make sure that there's none of that present when we pour the glue on, because we need to make sure the glue gets a good grip on the sandblasted texture of that glass. Now I'm just going to pour this glue on with a teaspoon. That's probably not the right way of doing it, but it's what I've got. And I believe that it's important to get the correct film thickness on there. I've heard it needs to be around about 1 to 3 millimeters thick. And it will start to form a jelly consistency as it cools down. So getting it on there quick enough is a bit of an issue. Alright, that's a bit of a mess. It's something I need to work on. You see that's already started to gel. Maybe it helps if you warm the glass up, I'm not sure. This is the middle of winter here, so it's pretty cold by Australian standards. Alright, I think I've got reasonable coverage on that. I'm just going to let that set and then go around and trim the edges. These have been sitting overnight now, and the glue has turned into a sort of a jelly-like consistency, which is apparently how it's meant to go. And the next step is to clean up the edges, and all you do is run a sharp blade along the edge of the vinyl. And then peel off that gel that's actually gone over the edge of the vinyl. Now, this bit never goes smoothly for me. Doesn't matter if you get some overlap on the vinyl itself, but you want a clean line through the edge of the opening in the vinyl. So I'll get this one done, and then the next step is to wait for this to go hard, and then it's got to be set aside for the glue to chip the glass. So that's the idea. I'll get this one cleaned up and then we'll just put these aside. Now, this is where I'm having difficulty. This is meant to go sort of hard, like hard toffee. Then you need to either put it in a very dry environment, or you need to heat it gently so that the glue will start to shrink and contract and tear the glass up. Now, when I did this on the previous attempt, it took forever. It was like 4 or 5 days. Now, everything I've read and everything I've been told is that it should only take overnight. Now, having said that, we've had a lot of rain recently. It's been very humid and very cool conditions, and I think that's part of the problem. But the idea is that you have to basically evaporate all the moisture out of the glue. So you do need a dry environment and a warm environment for that to happen, and I'm just not getting that with the weather we've got. Now, I've got a device that I made which should help to speed that process up. So it's a bit like a dehumidifier, but I'll let this get a bit harder, I hope, and then we'll try that and see how it goes. Alright, this is my interpretation of how to dry or evaporate the moisture out of that glue film that we looked at before. Now, I read about this online. It's a light box, and what I've got at this end is a 75 watt incandescent light bulb that produces heat, and at the other end of the box I've got a 5 volt computer fan. And what's happening is it's drawing air in underneath the lid. It's going past the light bulb over the top of my 2 pieces of glass that I've got in there at the moment, and then the fan is sucking out any moisture that evaporates out of that glue. Let's turn that bulb off so you can see. But when this glue went in, it was quite spongy and soft, and it's already feeling quite firm. And you'll also notice that I put some slits in the glue coming from the 4 corners of that rectangular window. Now, I believe that this is just to relieve stresses in the glue film itself, and it produces a more interesting chip pattern when we're done. So I'm going to leave this overnight, and hopefully tomorrow we'll have seen that that glue film has shrunk and chipped off, taking the glass with it, and we'll have that beautiful fractal pattern in the glass. Let's turn my bulb back on again. Rightio, let's see how we go. Just as a bit of a side note, I did a video recently about riveting, and if you watch this video where I made these aluminium bodies, I riveted these bars to the aluminium tubing, and I mentioned at the time that rivets were very hard to get hold of, and that's why I had to make my own. Now, as luck would have it, I was down at our local recycling centre just recently. Now, it's basically just a tip that anything that doesn't go in a landfill that can be recycled gets put on a shelf and you can go along and buy it. And I was walking down looking at the items on the shelves, and I found these 2 jars. Now, this one is full of iron round head rivets in really, really good condition. These look new. So these are a 3.2mm body and a round head in soft iron, and these are absolutely beautiful to use. They cut and form very, very easily, and of course they make a very strong joint. So $4 for a jar that size, and this jar has got flathead rivets. So these look like about, 5/32 with a flat head, also in a soft iron, also in remarkable condition. There's not any in there that are rusted, and I think that was $5. So there you go, that's one of those serendipity things. Okay, it's been 3 days since I first put the glue on that glass, and it's been sitting in the light box over those 3 days. So let's have a look and see how we got on. Now, this one has turned out not too bad. It's fully chipped all over, and the pattern in it is very, very good. But the other one is a bit disappointing. Now, this one has some residual glue still on the glass there, and it was very, very thin at that point, and I don't think it's been able to contract enough to pull the glass up and get that chip pattern in it. I'll wash this one off and we'll see, but I'm pretty sure that's just going to be plain glass there. And to be honest, it was a struggle to get the glue to chip off. I ended up using a dental probe and I picked away at it and I got it all off, but it's a huge investment in time. It's like 3 days to get to this point, and given that this glass is going to be behind some bars and at ground level, I'm not sure if it's worth investing that much time to get that pattern in it. But I love it. I love the fractal nature of that pattern. It's absolutely beautiful. But like I say, is it worth spending that much time to get that result? So let me get both these cleaned up and we'll have a close look at them. We'll put them in the light and see what it looks like with the light behind it. And then we'll try the etched or the sandblasted pattern as well and see which one looks the best. Right, be back shortly. Okay, I got this whole assembly together now, and I've got the LED bulb in there. Now it's a 12 volt AC DC LED bulb. I'm actually running this at 9 volts, otherwise the amount of light that comes out of that would just overwhelm the camera. And the whole idea of doing this decorative pattern on the glass was to diffuse the light from the bulb, and also so that you weren't looking directly at the bulb. Now that's the herringbone sandblasted pattern. There's the glue chip pattern. On this side the bulb is right up against the glass, so you can actually see through and you can see the individual elements in the LED bulb. But at the end of the day, this is down at ground level. It's you're not looking directly at it as you walk past anyway. So I think either of those 2 pieces of glass will do the job. I absolutely love the glue chip pattern. I love the way that looks, but it's a lot of work. And at the end of the day, I think this herringbone pattern here is more in keeping with the Art Deco theme. So it pains me to say it, but I think that's what I'm going to go with. Now when we come back, I'm going to do the powder coating on these aluminium units, and believe me, that's not simple. There's a lot of reasons why it's going to be complex, but we'll get all of that done. We'll put the glass in, we'll get the electrical done, and we'll get them in the garden, and I'll show you what this looks like at night. But for now, I think I've made my decision. I'll go with that. And just in closing, a lot of people asked me about the glass cutting, and they said, I'd love to have a go at that. I really should practice. One thing I forgot to mention is if you do practice this, try to get brand new glass. Now, old glass is brittle, it's hard to cut, it's nearly always got scratches and surface defects, and that affects the way that the glass will fracture. So if there's a surface scratch, it'll tend to follow that rather than the scored line that you've made. And it's just harder to get a decent score mark, and it breaks unpredictably. So if you do want to practice, go and see your local glass merchant. They normally have a skip full of offcuts. And even if you were able to get some window glass that was relatively new, I think you'd find it much easier to practice and learn. A lot of people give up because they get some 50-year-old piece of glass been lying around the shed and they wonder why it doesn't work. That's the reason, that you've got old glass and it's not easy to work with. Okay, well that's the end of today's video. Thanks for watching along. Certainly come back and let's have a look at this powder coating process. It's going to be fun. I say that jokingly, it's not going to be fun, but come back and have a look at that. Thanks for watching. It's Prezzo signing out. I'll catch you on the next video.